Today is the day that early in-person voting starts in Florida. Also, early voting today starts in Texas. And there's something interesting that's going on with early voting this year. Let's look first at Georgia. By this point in the last midterm election, so 2018 was the last midterm, the number of people who had voted early in Georgia was huge. It was a record-beating number, 2018. It was 434,000 people. That was seen at the time as just being unfathomably large for early voting numbers. Again, that was 2018. If you compare that to the previous midterm 4 years earlier in 2014, the 2018 numbers tripled what they had done in 2014. 430,000 votes by this point in 2018 is 3 times the early votes that had been cast by that point in the previous midterm. So it was just huge. So again, 2018, just over 430,000 people had voted. That was unimaginably large in terms of Georgia's records. Well, now it's the next midterm after 2018. What does early voting in Georgia look like today? According to the Georgia Secretary of State's office, the number of people who voted early this year is already well over 750,000. That's almost as high as the number of people who had voted by this time in the general election in Georgia in 2020, in the presidential year, when it was Joe Biden versus Donald Trump on the ballot. The midterm elections are the same numbers, effectively, as the presidential election, the presidential general election. That kind of early voter turnout in a midterm election year is not just unheard of, it's almost like science fiction. I mean, 400,000 was mind-blowing 4 years ago. Now it's over 750,000. It's just a whole new world, a huge surge in early voting in Georgia this year. And it is not just happening in Georgia. In North Carolina, requests for absentee ballots there are up 114% compared with the last midterm. In Ohio, the number of people voting early is up 75% from the last midterm. In Florida, the total number of people who have already voted early by mail, it's up 50% already from the last midterm. I mean, for all the efforts on the right this year to make voting scary and harder and disproportionately threatening to likely Democratic voters, especially people of color, I mean, for all those efforts that we are seeing and that we have been reporting on, even tonight, lots of Americans are showing up to vote early in record numbers in multiple states this year. And obviously, these numbers, they just tell you numbers. They don't tell you anything about who's necessarily going to win the election. But it does tell you that people are willing to show up and vote. And that is good news for a country that is effectively voting this year on the question of whether or not we're going to continue to have elections, whether or not we are going to continue to be a democracy. Seeing this many Americans turning up despite all the headwinds to cast their votes this year of all years, I don't know if you have cockles in your heart, but if you have cockles in your heart, they are probably warmed by this. Again, early voting begins today in Texas. Early in-person voting begins today in Florida. Watch this space.